So what we attempted to do and what we were able to accomplish is we hosted a training for Wisconsin Emergency Management. It allowed us to exercise our space in the Emergency Operations Center, also known as the EOC, and it gave them the opportunity to come into what would likely be an escalating incident. They used Fitchburg as their municipality of choice, and then they were able to build off of what they would typically see once they arrived, taking into consideration what our response would look like. So what I provided is our local response. It was a tabletop exercise that then progressed to the level that we needed assistance from the state incident management team. And so those team members came in and they were able to utilize their skills to identify or try to predict what type of assistance would be needed in the event that we had a large scale incident.
What's the value of doing something like this with a local department using state resources?
It's to show the integration between incident management team and local officials when there's a high demand for resources and some additional expertise is needed. So it's a good collaboration between local, state officials and how we collaborate together for incident response.
So are you seeing anything here in Fitchburg that you haven't necessarily seen other places with emergency operations?
The extent of the EOC build out, the capacity, the thought that went into developing the EOC here with a lot of technology capabilities, space use is not typically seen in all communities. So there's been a lot of work done here we can see, and that's very beneficial when we have to integrate into an emergency operations center. It's good to see that there's capability and capacity here that can take that.
And then can you just tell me what the role of emergency management is during a disaster?
To provide support to a local community or those that are afflicted by the emergency or situation.
Our Emergency Operations Center was designed with not only our local operations in mind, it was also designed with the county's emergency management operations in mind. What that allows us to do is, in the event that we have a large scale incident, that could be a natural disaster, a man-made disaster, it could be flooding, it could be something that disrupts normal operations and forces us to consider alternatives from a continuity standpoint. So by taking the county's operations and considering what their response is going to be, when we address our local response, we do it in a way that's consistent with and similar to that of the county. And so what I really valued with this training is the fact that we were able to use the different areas of the EOC as they were designed to be used. And that means that we were able to use all aspects of the fire station, not only the EOC, but other elements of Station 1, where our EOC is located, for those ancillary types of tasks and different operations that are required when we have a number of people working toward the incident resolution. One of the things that we need to be aware of is the fact that fire operations, emergency medical operations, public safety in general, is not just a matter of responding to the overall incident. It's a matter of resolving and hopefully coming to a situation where we can get people back to some semblance of normal. And that's what an emergency operations center does. I think one of the things that's a little bit different is probably my background in emergency management, to be able to think about those things that we've seen. You can take any number of incidents, and we could use tragedies that are happening in local municipalities today and identify those areas that are going to be needed, like reunification, for example. If we have a situation where family members are separated from each other and they're trying to find each other, this is a perfect example of where an emergency operations center and a reunification point comes into play. We can work with our schools, we can work with the county, as already mentioned, And then ultimately escalating up to the state level, it gives us the latitude to be able to figure out what's needed locally and do so in a way that makes sense when we bring others in to complement our response. So the investment allows us to utilize space that we would have anyway and maximize its efficiency and its effectiveness. What we've been able to do is to turn what amounts to a training room into an emergency operations center. And with the assistance of Dane County and with the training from the state, we are taking advantage of resources that exist already. Those funds are being invested in the city of Fitchburg, and we're just taking advantage of our ability to provide a place to house this equipment and then be able to use it when they're not using it. So it's been a very effective approach to not only be able to equip an emergency operations center, but then to use it almost on a daily, if not weekly basis. So it's been a pretty good return on investment for the city of Fitchburg, and we're fortunate to be able to participate at those levels. A couple of examples where the city of Fitchburg has already used the Emergency Operations Center. Throughout COVID, we've had to use the Emergency Operations Center for some coordination as it came to providing direction for anything from testing to vaccinations. We've used the Emergency Operations Center as a drive-through vaccination clinic. We've used it when we saw the public unrest throughout the 2020 summer season, where we were able to stand up the EOC to provide support to those areas that we're seeing more and more activity from people coming into the Madison area. It allows us to contribute to the overall effort and then try to predict how we will be affected as a municipality, given the fact that we are right on the border of the capital of Wisconsin, where activity has a tendency of taking place anyway. So it makes a lot of sense for us to consider not only how that is going to impact us, try to predict what we would need to be able to do, and then have the partnerships in place already to be able to exercise at that level. And that's not only practically, that's also through the planning process. We're once again pretty fortunate to be able to have that level of cooperation with those governmental agencies that will likely be here anyway in the event of an emergency. One more area where I can say that I've seen it used before, not necessarily in Fitchburg, but at my previous fire department, we had an active shooter incident where the Emergency Operations Center could have been used probably at a higher level. And what we could have done in advance is to do what we're doing now in Fitchburg, and that's develop those relationships. So when the emergency happens, there's no second guessing about the resources that are available and how to stand those up in a timely fashion. I think one of the things that I want to just reinforce with those that have any questions about the services that we provide is to reach out. I am completely I completely understand that people don't necessarily operate in the same environment that I do or that the fire department does, and may not have the same exposure. And sometimes it's just a matter of answering questions. So the issue is I have a tendency of dreaming in disasters, and if that speaks to anything, it's the fact that I want to be ready for the unthinkable. So when the unthinkable does happen, we're at least prepared to take it to its resolution and try to bring some positive outcomes to a negative situation. That's what we're trying to do. Any questions, please reach out to the fire department, me directly if you want, and I'd be happy to answer those questions.